Nice, nice. All right, how you doing?
All good, man. All good. How are you?
I'm really good, man. I can finally talk to you. I'm stoked.
Yeah, me too. Me
You know,
too. Been a
me and
long
you,
time.
yeah, me and you, we have spoken a lot during the years, but it's really nice to have a video call, face to face. So it's gonna be good.
Yeah, definitely. Next one's got to be in person, or you got to go over to Wales.
Of course, man. I've been checking some flights, but I don't understand which airport you're stationed in.
There's no, there's only one. You go Cardiff is the only one in Wales. You could go to Bristol in England as well, but anywhere else you're gonna have a long old drive down to where I'm from. Then.
Yeah, do I have to take a train or a bus to get to your place? You're from artillery or something.
Yeah, Abbotsbury. So yeah. If you was to go to Cardiff, Cardiff Airport, you'd either have to get multiple trains because um Cardiff Airport is more so in a place called Barry, so you'd have to get like a train into Cardiff Central, then Cardiff to Lanelef, and then a taxi or an Uber from Lanelef to the gym, man. But we make it work one day. If you ever want to do it, we'll make it work.
Yeah, man. I'm telling you the truth. I've been checking the flights. I want to bring my girlfriend to Wales. I want to visit Wales. I want to see your gym. I want to meet you in person. It's gonna be if I can make it happen. It's gonna be really good.
Yeah, definitely,
Because
definitely.
I love the UK. I want to go to Ireland. I want to visit London a few more times, and of course Wales and even Scotland. Like all of those countries. But Wales, I like the people in Wales. I like you a lot. It just it tend to be really difficult to reach you. So I don't know. I have to ask for help, like how to which plane and which train and whatever. But I'm gonna make it work sometime.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll make it happen. We'll make it happen.
All right. I'm not gonna take much of your time. So can you tell me about did you have any combat sports in your life before starting training when you were younger?
Yeah, I started off kickboxing as a youngster. I think I was yeah, 6 years old when I started kickboxing. MMA and jiu-jitsu or BJJ, sorry, wasn't really a big thing then. It was we did a little bit of like traditional jiu-jitsu in the gym, or Tai-Jitsu Kai was the system. It was like a mixture of Japanese jiu-jitsu, judo. We'd mix in the striking with the gis on as well. But I didn't do a great deal of that as a kid, to be honest. I just did, the kickboxing. My father joined the same gym, did the jiu-jitsu side of things. So I did a little bit of that with him on the weekends. And then in 2007 then, or 2008, sorry, he opened up his own gym. And that's when I jumped, deep into the MMA, deep into the BJJ, which was still very like different to what it is now. It wasn't a sport based. BJJ back then was more like, in a way, the Gracies taught it, so more for self defense, more MMA based. You wanted to be in top position, fighting from the top. You didn't ever want to be on your back or whatever. It's a lot different now. It's a lot more sport orientated now with the points and the submission attempts and stuff, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But back then when I started it, it was very different. So that was 12 years of age, yeah, and it just naturally, because I was in the gym with a lot of adults. There was no kids classes. I was 12 or 13. I was just training with the men, and all these men were training for MMA fights, and which obviously led to me wanting to fight in MMA. And you're bothering with all these tough guys from around the town you live in, and you're thinking, well, if they're doing it, I want to do it so I can be like them. And it just took off from there, really.
So you were 12 when you started training in MMA?
Yeah, around about 12 or 13. Also done kickboxing, like I said, early on as a kid. But the serious training, the sorry, not the kickboxing, the MMA, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, sort of started at around 12, 13. I had a little bit of obviously base in judo and traditional jiu-jitsu and stuff, but nothing worth screaming or shouting about. Never competed in it, only ever competed in like a kumite or kickboxing type setting before transitioning to MMA.
All right. Yeah. If I'm looking at Tapology, it says that your amateur debut was back in 2012. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, yeah. 17 years old. Um, I remember it well. 'Cause I've been trying to get a fight for ages because, again, like I said, even back as early as 2012, this was before obviously the Conor McGregor era. Um, MMA wasn't nowhere near as big as it is now, and also to find another 17-year-old for you to fight was a big ask. It's not like it is now. Now we have kids from the age of 8 up to 16 fighting every week or fighting every other month, whatever you want to call it. But back then it was very difficult to find kids to fight. And I remember we got two of us matched, funny enough. It was me and my best friend, Mike the Truth. We call him Mike the Truth, but Michael Jones. We went through school together, and Mike started training with me at around 14, I think he was, when we started doing our kids program, and now we both managed to get matched up on the same card, which was is a nice memory to look back on.
And you did really good in the beginning of your career. You had a lot of first round finishes. How was that feeling? A lot of submissions. Is that because of your submission work prior to joining MMA?
Yeah, I think obviously before I had the MMA fight, so I had my debut at 17. I've been competing a lot in BJJ, so from sort of like 14 years on, so for like the last 3, 4 years prior to that fight, every bit of competition I did was BJJ, nogi, gi, submission grappling. So it just almost felt like that was where I was most comfortable. Where it was second nature. Obviously, where I'd come from like a bit of a striking background at the start, I'd done a good 5 years up to that point of mainly grappling and groundwork. So I'd get into the fights, and I was quite unassuming. So I didn't look very intimidating. I was a little chubby kid, and I think I used to fight these big tatted up men who looked tough. So they would try and like kind of rush me and try and intimidate me and sort of think, oh, I'll just get this kid out here. And then obviously they get close, I'd take them down. And one thing was I was very quick at learning things with jiu-jitsu. I was a very good grappler naturally. So my ground game, no matter who I fought, seemed to always be that level above, which is obviously why I caught so many first round subs. And also to add into that, my grappling style was very MMA based. Everything I did, every bit of grappling I did was in the back of my mind for MMA. So I was always considering where I could punch, where I could strike, how my strikes could set up the submission, or how my submission could set up the strikes. And I would kind of just get people down and dominate them that badly with a ground and pound that they'd end up giving me a sub. That's just what you get out there in the end, I think.
Um, it says that you competed in European Championships. Can you talk
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, so that was the first ever. You got the IMAF now, the IMMAF, which is a massive, massive. Well, it's the biggest. It's almost MMA's equivalent to the Olympics or the Commonwealth Games, obviously for us. And it was their first ever European show, and I was lucky that it was in Birmingham because everything with the IMAF is not like the boxing; it's self-funded because we're not actually a recognised governing body. So we had to fund ourselves our own trip. Now obviously these days they're doing shows in Abu Dhabi and Russia and Serbia. It costs a lot more to get to. I was very fortunate that the first European was in Birmingham, which is a 2 hour drive for me. So weighed it up, could I afford to do it? Decided to do it. I had to do the trial then. At the time, there wasn't even a Team Wales; it was a Team UK. So I had to do the trial to get onto the UK squad. Managed to get on there, and again, I think the coaches would be the first to tell you the UK coaches. When I first got on the team, I was probably the most unassuming guy on there. I was quiet, didn't say a lot, quite introverted, and then once we started doing the squad session, I think they fast realised the potential I had. I remember a UFC legend, now John Maguire, Gypsy Jiu Jitsu. He was the coach at the time, and I remember speaking. We've shared fight cards and stuff since. I remember him saying to me, like, we never expected you to be the one that would dominate. And then as soon as we done that first squad session, he said, I remember thinking, yeah, he's going to be our gold medal. And I ended up doing 4 fights in 3 days. So I had 2 fights in the first day, 1 fight semi-final the second day, and obviously the final on the third day. You had to make weight every single day. So it was a tough experience physically and mentally because you have the higher one in the fight, and then you got to bring yourself down back down to earth and think, I got to do it again this afternoon, I got to do it again tomorrow. And yeah, to this day, one of the toughest things I've ever done, and one of my proudest achievements, to be honest.
Did you learn, did you take that experience into your later stage of your MMA career with the weight cutting?
I think not so much the weight cutting because I fought a 155 pound then, and because we had to make weight every single day. I remember thinking, I don't want to have to cut no weight, so I made sure that I just dieted down, so I was walking around at 155. It was a good and a bad thing. The good thing was I didn't have to deplete myself. The bad thing was everyone else in the category was cutting weight, so everyone was bigger and stronger than me. But it managed to work out for me in the end. But what it did do for me was build my confidence because I always knew I was decent, a decent level. Everyone else used to say to me, you're going to get in the UFC, you're going to do this and do that, and it's like you hear it and you don't always believe it. And I remember winning that and thinking. Or even signing up for it, I remember signing up and thinking, if I win this now, I'm ready to go pro because this will make me the best the best fighter at the weight in Europe. And I didn't just win it, I cruised it pretty much. I had 3 first round submissions. I dominated a big guy in the final who was undefeated. And it just instilled a big confidence in me. And also because you don't get to cherry pick your fights, you put into a category of 30 other fighters, they do a draw and you just fight whoever they say you're fighting. It wasn't seeded or anything like that. So you could essentially have the 2 best guys fight in the first round. And what it drilled into me was the mentality of you can just fight anyone anytime, if they tell you you're fighting this guy, don't think twice about it, suck it up and get on with it. And that's something I sort of took into my career. Win or lose, I always never turned down a challenge. I never said no to a fight. I never said no to a date, to a location. And I think that comes from doing that so early on as a 20-year-old or a 19-year-old, wherever I was at the time.
Yeah, man, it sounds really good. You had 12 fights as an amateur. I don't know who it is in England or Wales or whatever, but in Sweden, a lot of fighters tend to cut their line or the road to the professionals as short as possible. You had 12 fights. It's a few fights. Was that in the plan, like to make you the best fighter you could be before stepping onto the big stage as a professional?
Well, to be honest, at the time of just before I turned pro, I was the most experienced amateur they'd ever been in Wales in terms of amateur fight because back then the scene was so sort of small that I remember being like 4-5-0, and people were saying to me, "When are you going to go pro?" And I remember thinking, "I don't want to rush yet. I'm only young. I was a bit of a late bloomer, so I wanted to make sure I was physically ready as well as skillfully ready." So I remember people asking me about turning pro at like 4-0, 5-0. And I remember saying to my dad, "No, I'm not ready yet. I want to make sure that I'm fighting. Wanted to make sure I had good tests." It's a little bit different now. The scene is so big. You've got multiple IMAF tournaments. You've got like the Welsh MMA do shows, the British MMA do shows. So it's not unheard of now. Like we got boys in the gym who's had 20 odd amateur fights or 25 amateur fights. My teammate Scott Pedersen, I think he had 20 plus amateur fights. Rowan Cropper, he had 20 amateur fights. Kane Darcy's had over 20 amateur fights. And Kane hasn't even turned pro yet. He's on the verge of turning pro now. So it's a little bit different now but back then that was a lot of fights, to have as an amateur 12. And I'm glad I did it because I remember before the IMAF, I would have been more like, I mean, 7 or 8-0. I remember thinking, right, I'm going to go pro in October and just turn pro at 7-0. And realistically, I had a couple of tough tests, but no one of the level that I fought in the IMAF. So I was so glad that it came out. And I remember my dad saying, should we just do this and then go pro? And I'm just so glad I did it because it put me in real good stead. The tests that I had there were a lot tougher than the ones I'd had previously. And I think when I look back at my early part of my pro career, if I'd fought the guys I fought, fights 1-7 in pro, if I'd fought them without the IMAF experience, maybe it wouldn't have gone so well.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna ask you now. Was there any fight in the early stages of your professional career? Like, don't get me wrong, you absolutely crushed your professional career, but was there any fight that gave you any lessons to take into the camp afterwards?
I had a couple of tough fights early on. I also had tough fights in the UFC, but early on, the toughest fight I think I probably had was against Vaughan Lee. It was my bantamweight debut with Cage Rush. I'd won like 4 or 5 featherweight fights, decided to drop on the bantamweight, and they put me in with Vaughan Lee. For those who don't know, Vaughan Lee was a UFC veteran, and at the time that I fought Vaughan, he had actually had more fights in the UFC than I'd had fights in total. So it was a daunting test, and I'd pretty much blown everyone out the water up until that fight. I had like first round finishes, second round finishes, third round finishes, and no one really. I fought some good level boys, don't get me wrong, but no one really pushed me to find that extra gear. Where I remember fighting Vaughan, and because he had such an awkward style, he had that experience, he was tough, he was a lot older than me. I remember after like the first 2 minutes of the first round, I remember thinking, yeah, we're in for a fight here. This isn't going to be a walkover. I'm going to have to dig my feet in and go for it a little bit. And I remember we exchanged on the feet. We was going shot for shot. Fortunately, I got my range towards the end of the first round and took over and started to dominate. But even then, where I would be able to break most guys in the second and third round and get them out of there, he just had that wily veteran experience where he could survive, and I'd get close to getting a submission or a finish, and boom, next thing you know, he's out and he's back in the game. Well, I crack him with a shot and rock him. I think, oh, I've got him here. I'd use a load of energy to try and finish him, and then next thing you know, he's back walking at me. So it was a good learning experience, one I'm always trying for. And he's a good guy as well, Vaughan. He's a great guy. I've seen him at UFC shows since, where he's been cornering fighters. He's a real good high level coach now. And he's a gentleman as well, and we always have a catch up every time we see. So whenever I think about tough fights early on that stick out, it's always Vaughan Lee, and yeah, just a pleasure to be in there with him at that stage in my career. Fun fact as well about that fight is the first ever UFC show I went to watch live, I was 17 years old, and it was UFC in Birmingham. I think it was Birmingham anyway. And Vaughan Lee fought on the prelims in the UFC. So that would have been like 2012. So I watched him fight in the UFC at 2012. And then 6 years later, 2018, I was in there sharing the cage with him myself, which was crazy. So yeah, it was a good experience.
Did you tell him that?
Yeah. I told him. I didn't want to tell him before the fight in case he thought he had a mental edge over me. But I told him afterwards, and ever since that final bell rung, we earned each other's respect massively. Because we had a good tear up, and it was just we've been good. I wouldn't say good friends, but we've been friendly ever since. And whenever I see him, it's good to see him. And I know the respect I got from him is repaid. He's got the same respect for me.
Sounds really nice. Great story. Great story. Thank you for giving me that fun fact. Do you want to tell me about your shot at the Cage Wars title, the vacated belt?
Yeah, so I had a bit of a mad roller coaster road, to be honest, for the title. Obviously, I was a big ticket seller in Wales. I was known for many years, up until last year probably, as the Welsh poster boy for MMA. We was fighting in a place called the Newport Centre, which seated 1,500 people, and I was almost selling out on my own. So I remember saying to Cage Warriors after I beat Vaughan Lee in London, and I remember saying, look, if we're going to go back to Wales, it's got to be bigger. They came through on their end, and they locked in a place called the Viola Arena, or the Ice Arena. It's where the Cardiff Devils play ice hockey. So it's pretty cold in there, as you can imagine. So I was meant to fight for the title in September, and I remember night before the fight, cutting weight, going to bed. I thought, get up in the morning, finish the weight cut. And I had a phone call the morning of the weigh-ins telling me that my opponent who I was going to fight for the title was out. He had an issue with a brain scan. So I was like, what does this mean for the fight? I was like, I've got a fight. And obviously, I've just sold you 4,000 tickets. And I remember him saying, look, just come weigh in. We're going to do our best to get you someone. So I weighed in 135 pounds. In my head, I thought they're going to get me someone for the title. They ended up getting me Wesley Meyer, who's gone on to do really well now in Cage Warriors and the PFL. But at the time, he was relatively unheard of. And because he had to weigh in late, we did it at 145 pounds, which meant that the fight couldn't happen. So I weighed in 135, ended up fighting at 145, which wasn't an issue for me. I just wanted to fight. I was just happy to get a fight. So I still did the fight, but it wasn't for the belt. So I beat Meyer in a round, and then we went on then to fight Ekendeo in the Ice Arena in December, which was for the vacant title. And at the time, it was probably the biggest fight they could have made in UK MMA. I was 9-0. He was 8-0. I was ranked number 1 in the UK. He was ranked number 2, both undefeated. And it was a sweet one for me because it was on the Cage Warriors 100 show, so their landmark 100th event. So the main event there was guys on the undercard, Nicholas Dalby, Jai Herbert, who all gone on to fight in UFC. Paddy was even meant to fight as the co-main event. He ended up getting injured. And so to have it in Wales and to have my name on the poster is brilliant, And it was a sweet, sweet victory, really, because everyone thought I was going to lose, apart from me and my teammates. For some reason, I don't know why, everyone thought I was going to get steamrolled, and I absolutely blew him out the water and dominated him and ended up getting the finish. And to do that, to win the world title, obviously, but to do it in your home country with all your friends and family there watching was crazy. And to this day, I've never felt an atmosphere in the crowd like it. It was like felt like a rave in there, felt like a party. So it was brilliant. I enjoyed it. I loved it. And I always look back on it fondly.
Did they count you out for your title defense as well, or did they think that you're going to win now?
For the defense, no, same
Yes.
thing. I put Scott Malone in the defense. Scott was on a tear at the time. Scott's another good guy. I've trained with Scott since, and we're quite friendly. But same thing. I had a lot of stick off the Scottish fans because it was England. It was Wales versus Scotland. And again, I think a lot of people, he beat my teammate actually on the show before. So in the December when I won the belt, Scott submitted my teammate in the first round. So it held a little bit of another like sweet victory because I got that one back to my teammate. The same again. That was a tough fight. Managed to break him down and get him out there, but was always the underdog for some reason. It wasn't until I went to UFC that people started putting me as the favorite on the betting lines.
Reaching the UFC. Tell me about that. When did you get the call that you were gonna go to the UFC?
So literally, I beat Scott Malone on the Saturday, and by the following Saturday, I'd had the call to say that the UFC were interested and that they wanted to sign me. Obviously, it was a bit of a jump around to start because I think I was due to go on holidays in the July, and they wanted to put me on International Fight Week. Luckily, my manager at the time managed to move it to Copenhagen in the September. But yeah, so within a week of defending the title, they were in touch and they were like, "Look, we want him. What's it going to cost?" We told them what it was going to cost, and just like that, a dream had come true. I was signed to the UFC.
Reaching the UFC is for most people their dream or their favorite memory. Is this your favorite memory, or when you became the Cage Warriors champion in Wales?
It's such an hard one to pick because that's so monumental to me winning the belt and being the Cage Warriors champion and doing it in Wales. But then in the grander scheme of things, there's probably hundreds of thousands of MMA fighters in the world. There's probably only ever been 100 odd Cage Warriors champions, maybe 200 odd Cage Warriors champions. But the amount of them guys, so amount of the champions then go on to the UFC and not only go to the UFC, but obviously to win 6 fights and get ranked is even smaller again. So, personally, I love the thought of winning the belt in front of my hometown. But if you look at the grander scheme, I think a bigger achievement is obviously going on to the UFC and beating some of the best in the world and I am those guys.
You fought really good fighters in the UFC. Can you tell me why the fight against Umar Nurmagomedov, title challenger, didn't come true? Like it says it was cancelled on Tapology.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one because they told us that Umar was injured or wasn't because that was meant to happen in London, and they told us that he was either injured or unavailable. I can't remember what it was. They come to us and said, "Look, Umar's out. We're keeping you on the card. You're going to fight Valiev." And then obviously Khabib and stuff was posting to say that he's not injured. They don't understand why he's been removed from the fight. I don't know. I don't really know. All I know is that they pulled him out and put someone else in and kept me on the same date on the same card. I don't know if he was injured or if they wanted a different fight, a location. I don't know. But obviously he's gone on to do very, very well and is a beast. So that would have been a fun fight as well.
Was the difference between competition in between the UFC and the Cage Warriors, was that high?
Yeah, it was a massive, massive step up. Even like from the Cage Warriors to the debut. Like I fought a guy in my debut who was relatively unknown from America, and you could just feel the difference straight away. These guys are like in Cage Warriors, I find guys were good everywhere, but they'd always have a weakness that you could exploit. Which in the UFC, you just kind of got to accept everyone is good everywhere. You have your game plan, and you just got to try and pick your holes on the job. Everyone's just so good in every position, in every facet of the fight.
You reached a 15-0 record, and then you lost to Ricky Simone. Did that take a toll on your mental health, like being so dominant and then get hit with a loss?
You know why everyone asks me that? And it's funny because I feel like it was almost like a relief, to be honest, because every storyline for every fight I had from about 5-0 was undefeated. Is he going to keep the streak going? When's he going to, is this the guy to dethrone him? And also I was devastated to lose. I'm not, by any means, I wasn't, like thinking, oh, thank God. I was devastated and heartbroken to lose. But the coming days after, I expected, like you said, to be depressed and down. But it was just a case of like, I almost felt like it was a monkey off my back. I felt like it got to a stage where I was like just fighting not to lose rather than fighting to win. So it was one of them. I lost to a good guy who was ranked, I think he was ranked 10 at the time. He's gone on, picked a couple of losses up, but he's back on a bit of a winning streak now, doing well. So it was one of them, now I'm retired, you look on and you live and learn and you look back. You don't look back on the results, you look back on the memories. I don't look back at that and think, oh, I lost the fight. I look back and think, I stepped in there one of the best in the world. I talked to my coaches the other day about some of the funny memories you've had over the years, um, in training, in fight week, in the fights, and yeah, it's just been a brilliant ride. So I was gutted at the time, but I don't look back on it with any devastation. Fighting and martial arts is all about living and learning, and whether you win, lose, or draw, each experience is fate. In my opinion, I'm not religious or anything like that, but what is meant to be will be, and if that's what the universe had planned for me, there's a reason for it, and that is what it is.
I think the same on the last part you said. With this loss, you moved up to featherweight. Why did you move up to featherweight?
I moved to featherweight because the weight cuts were killing me. I was on the verge of death a couple of times. I'll be honest. I come so close to. I never missed weight at bantamweight, but that was only because I'm a hard-headed fucker that doesn't know he's that should probably listen to his body more than he does. But I was just it was killing me. The fight camps were no longer about training for my opponent and game planning and getting better. They were about cutting weight. Running 2 times a day for 6 weeks is no good for you. Taking an effect on my mental health. It was making training unenjoyable to the point where I didn't want to get up in the morning to go to the gym. And like we said about everything happens for a reason, it was kind of like if I beat Ricky Simone, would I have moved up the weight? Probably not. I probably would have took on the next guy who's ranked a little bit higher and thought, what, I'll be fine. I'll be all right. I'll just do another weight cut and make it happen. And who knows what could have happened? Perhaps something serious could have happened in the weight cut then. But it was fate, and I'm glad I did it. It's the best decision I ever made. I know the results didn't always go my way, but it was the most enjoyable time of my career, to be honest, going back to featherweight and with the training and the development.
That fight you had against Makwan Amirkhani at UFC London, the first fight at featherweight. That was a great fight for me because I could see you perform. Did you feel stronger in the fight in the octagon, moving up a weight class?
Yeah, I felt so obviously when you move up a weight class, you kind of always worry like, are they going to be the guys are obviously going to be bigger? Are they going to be stronger? But I just felt so much better. I felt like it wasn't so much a strength thing; it was more so because I'd spent the entire training camp developing skills and my game plan that it was almost like I just felt like I was back in love with training again and back in love with the process of getting ready for a fight rather than when I was at bantamweight, I would just dread the fight week coming around because I knew how hard it would be. With this one, I just felt like I would game plan, I'd improve my skills, and I'd ready to just go in there and put a performance. And Mark one's a good fight there. At the time, he'd been in there with some of the best guys in the division, so it was a good test and one of my best performances, to be honest.
And I think the victory seems a little bit more special considering your father's history. You were preparing with his battles as well. How did that affect you going into fight week when he was battling chemo and cancer and stuff?
Yeah, it was obviously the camp was tough because he wasn't in the gym as much as we used to. He was in the gym, obviously, but as you know yourself, obviously being a cancer survivor, there's periods after the chemo where you have to stay away from people and not have no contact because of the immune system being so low, just because of generally feeling like shit after the treatment. So he wasn't there as much as we're used to, but obviously the other coaches picked up the slack and it was just motivating because I remember him like having his treatment on say the Monday and then he's in the gym training himself on a Wednesday. So I used to think, well, if we are feeling tired and aching and don't want to train today, and then you got him down there going through this and still training and putting the effort in, and we got no excuse. So it was a tough camp mentally because obviously like I had to look kind of like be there for my sister, my mother, our family, and for him, because he'll have you believe he's tough as nails, which he is, but obviously he was struggling as well going through it. As you've been there yourself. So it was mentally a tough camp, but again, I used it as a bit of motivation and fire in the belly. I think, well, if he's down here putting in the work, what excuse have I got?
And after this, you became a father, and then you were really excited to go into fight at UFC 301 as a father. Did that mean anything more special to you, fighting as a father?
I mean, not so much in a fighting sense, but just like, just being a dad's the best thing that's ever happened to me. We talk about achievements with the fights and stuff like that, but none of that even compares to watching my little boy be born or watching him grow up or seeing him take his first steps or seeing him say a new word. it making me laugh. Like nothing compares to the feeling of having a son and watching him grow. So it just changed my life. If I'm honest, it changed my life totally, and probably, you know, part of the reason why I ended up retiring when I did, because I was missing so much time with him during a fight camp, and I just thought I've had a good career, and the juice ain't worth the squeeze no more. Like I can have all the money in the world and all the money in the bank and all the titles, but one thing I can't ever get back is time. And I felt like I was missing a lot. What was that? I was coming out of fight camp and realizing how much time I was actually missing with him. And then I remember thinking, you know what, I gotta make a decision here. I'm a kind of 1 foot out the door because of the baby, and I want to be there for the special moments. I don't want to be away when he's going to school. I like being home I like being there to put him to bed in the nights and being there when he wakes up in the mornings and stuff like that. So it's just such a good, like, hopefully, everyone who gets to experience it will say the same thing. You don't know what like true love feels like until you see that child. Everyone tells you about it, but when you see him for the first time, it's an incredible feeling. And yeah, it changed my life totally. I love him to bits.
Also, you don't want to take too much effect on your mental health when you're going to raise a kid as well. I think that might have been in the considerations for doing this heavy shows, to walk away from the sport that you love.
Yeah, look, it's a tough game fighting. It's a dangerous game. I've been fortunate. I haven't had too many bad injuries. I haven't had too many bad knocks. Obviously, I've been TKO'd twice or once, and I've only ever been dropped twice in my entire career, and that's in and out of the gym. I've never been dropped in the gym. I've been dropped twice in the cage. So it's not bad going realistically, but I remember, like thinking, I don't want to keep doing this and doing it. And I've always said, even from like 20, I always say I'll be done by 30. And everyone used to laugh at me and say, you got no chance. I'm telling you, I'll be done by 30. And obviously, like we said about the universe and the stars aligning, they aligned, and that's where I ended up happening. And, it's always in the back of your mind. You don't want to take too much damage. You see so many guys punch drunk, and, their heads are gone when they've gone on too long and been knocked out too many times. I never wanted that to be me.
How did the media react when you made that decision, walking away at age of like 29? You're 30 now, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I think it's really special because you walked away on your own terms. You had a great career and you made it because of a good reason as well. But how, like, the did you get any backlash? How did the reactions from the world come to you?
Obviously, I think there was a lot of shock. I don't think a lot of people expect it because I'm so young, and we're still doing very, like, even in the fights I lost, like the Brito fight I lost was bullshit. And then even to lose to Zalal, like I was in the fight, I may have even stole a first round. No, I got finished. But look what he's gone to do. He's ranked number 12 in the world now, and I think people still seen a lot of potential in me. But I think there was shock, but I think there was a lot of respect. I haven't had no real negative backlash. I think a lot of people respected that, especially. I don't give a fuck about trolls online, but especially people, higher up in the sport, whose opinions kind of count. A lot of them were sort of tweeting or messaging me to say, fair play, you doing it on your own terms, retiring when you want to, not when. Because let's be honest, 90% of fighters are forced to retire because they've had too many losses, been knocked out too many times. And, I think a lot of people respect the fact that I was openly admitted that I was done with fighting, and they were like, all respect to you for calling it a day and not jumping off, jumping off the wagon before it's too late. I have a lot of people messaging me now, like who obviously miss me fighting, like, come on, come back, you got to come back for one more. And obviously, I always loved all the support. When it's like, look, I'm done, and yeah. So anyone whose opinion I valid supported my decision, and had a lot of nice things to say, which was nice.
I'm one of those people that I wish you could come back, but I'm not gonna sit there and pray because you have a kid to raise and you made a great choice, and I'm happy for you. But of course, I miss my boy fighting.
Yes,
Um,
that's it. That's it. It's a catch-22, but who knows? You'll have to just live through me now cornering the boys in the UFC in a couple of years.
exactly. Yeah, if you're gonna coach someone up to the UFC, that would be a full circle moment.
Yeah, that's the next goal on the list. Obviously we got Oban in the UFC now. He's already there doing brilliant things. But what I would love is to kind of have one of the youngsters that I've got now. I'm helping coach the 16, 17, 18-year-olds. It'd be great to like kind of coach them through their pro career and and get into the UFC, like how my dad did with me and how he did with Oban and Marshman. That would be a good moment for me as well. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I know I've surpassed a little bit of your time, but I had one last question. That was the future for you in terms of MMA, and I think that comes without saying that you're gonna coach. And tell me more about this coaching. Like, how is everything working out? How often do you have sessions a week, and is this your daily life? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I do a lot of one-to-one coaching. So a lot of the obviously my father got such a big team that we have like 20 odd fighters on the match. So it's tough for him to give everyone, an equal amount of time because like if Oban or Brett has got a big fight coming up or Scott, they obviously take priority as the established pro fighters. But sometimes the amateurs don't always get as much necessary attention as some of the more experienced boys when they got fights, which is understandable. This happens in every gym in the world. So I do a lot of one-to-one training with the amateurs through the daytime, working their striking, their grappling, their wrestling. And then also I help my dad out with the session. So like I take some of the wrestling sessions, I take the grappling sessions when he can't do it. And then obviously when they have their sparring days, it's an extra set of eyes on the mat, whereas usually he's trying to manage 20 guys. I'm there helping manage now and we do it between us. We also got other coaches that help out as well. So it's enjoyable. It's stressful as well because some of these kids don't realize their potential and realize the opportunity they've got. Like I keep trying to say to them, when I was your age, I was going for a run in the morning and training once in the night, and we have 5 sessions a week on the gym. Now you've got 20 sessions a week. So, I know you're tired and you're aching, but get on with it and make the sacrifice. So it can be frustrating at times, but also very rewarding. And, I'm only new into the journey, 6 months in. I'm enjoying it, and we'll see where it goes.
Thank you so much for your time, man. I'm really happy that I get to talk to you and make this interview so I can write it down and show some love to the Swedish people.
Yeah, Vince, thanks, bro. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. You're a good man. You're a good friend, good friend, and you're a strong guy as well. It's a pleasure to chat to you. Anytime I'll just drop me a message and we'll get it booked in.
Yeah, man, it's kind of crazy that I have this connection with you, man. Like completely random. I was at the gym lifting weights, doing squats, really tired at like I think it was 10 p.m. and then I get a notification from you on the Instagram, and I was like, what the fuck? So it's kind of crazy how we're here, doing this shit.
That's it, bro. But like I said, if you ever want to chat again, you just let me know and we'll get it booked in.
Thank you. Good luck with the coaching, man.
Thank you, brother. I'll speak to you soon, okay?
Yeah, see ya.
Ta-ra, bye.